Welcome back to Dirty 20, everybody. Today, we take a first look at the latest release from Wizard of the Coast, Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Let's get on with the show. A scream shatters the still gloom. Inhuman shapes slip between crumbling tombs. The shadows reach forth. Do instincts and imaginations conspire against you? Or have otherworldly evils claimed you, drawing you into the mists of Ravenloft? So, this latest campaign sourcebook takes us back to the demi-plane of Dread, known as Ravenloft. We've covered the pre-written adventure Curse of Strahd in the past, where we talked about horror and the absolute classic that is Ravenloft, which I strongly recommend you check out. We'll also be doing a whole video on Van Richten himself, so we won't be talking too much about him today. He is easily kind of one of my favorite characters in the game, so definitely keep your eyes peeled for that. So this book looks to expand on Curse of Strahd and Ravenloft itself with some, for example, some lineages. If we look at the contents page and you take a look here, we've got some new lineages in the character creation section, including the Dampier, which is interesting, and I think I'll probably do a video on that individually later on because it's pretty cool. You've also got Dark Gifts, some subclasses, a College of Spirits, a Warlock of the Undead, which you might have seen in Unearthed Arcana, and also some backgrounds, including the Haunted one, which is one that if you do own Curse of Strahd, you're probably very familiar with. And so there is a little bit of reprinting going on here, but you know, it happens. However, the thing that really kind of begins to expand Ravenloft and all that we got in the adventure Curse of Strahd is the Domains of Ravenloft. So the Domains of Dread. Now, technically, Curse of Strahd takes place in just one of those domains, the Domain of Dread known as Barovia, which is actually included in here. You can see it along with its Dark Lord, Strahd von Zarovich. Here we have each different domain, and you can see here it gives you the domain of the first vampire, gives you a little kind of subtitle. Then it tells you the Dark Lord, which of course we're fairly familiar with this fella, the vampire Strahd von Zarovich. You also have some hallmarks and Mist Talisman, which, you know, it explains a little bit in the book itself. But what I'm particularly interested in is the genres, right? So in this case, you've got Barovia being Gothic horror. Now, if we look at the second one, which is Bluetspur, and you can see here genre cosmic horror, right? And so I really like what they've done. Some are even like a combination of a couple of different types of genres. For example, the Carnival, where you've got body horror and dark fantasy. This one looks quite cool. I really like the artwork here. But this does actually remind me, if you haven't checked out our spring one-shot, The Rapture, please do so. It was a lot of fun, and this particular Domain of Dread kind of reminded me a little bit of that. But anyway, back to the guide. Each demiplane has its own Dark Lord. So in this case, for Barovia, it's Strahd von Zarovich. If you look again at Bluetspur, which I just love that name, it's the god brain of Bluetspur, which, trust me, I've had a little read of it. It's very cool. This might be maybe one of my favorite Domains of Dread that I need to get my players to visit. Now, the Dark Lords are a kind of a very intrinsic element of this book, and so I thought we could have a quick look at page 65, where we have this section titled Facing Dark Lords. Each Dark Lord in this chapter has a stat block from the monster manual or chapter 5 that you can use or customize to suit your adventures. Though you might be tempted to make a Dark Lord an overwhelming threat, doing so risks distancing a rich, versatile villain from the characters. A Dark Lord is often far from the most physically daunting creature in their domain, but their nature as a Dark Lord makes permanently defeating them challenging. To defeat a Dark Lord, the characters should focus on undermining the Dark Lord's plot and striking at the core of the Dark Lord's torments to make them vulnerable. A climactic encounter with a Dark Lord should happen when and how it's right for your adventures. After all, dread isn't a factor of challenge rating or character level, but of the suspense your adventures create. Now, I see what they're saying, and the perspective that scary has little, if nothing, to do with stats. I'm with. But I do wish they had stat blocks for the Dark Lords. I'll be honest. Like, if you look at Barovia, right, where we're very familiar with Strahd, who is this kind of legendary vampire. And in it, you are told to statistics are similar to those of a vampire in his spellcasting prowess is formidable. So they're basically telling you to go to the monster manual and look at the stats for the vampire on there. And I don't know. To me, it seems a little silly. And you can always turn to Curse of Strahd for, like, you know, the stat block that's in there with all the kind of crunch that's there. But what about the other Dark Lords? For instance, on page 78, one of the Dark Lords of Borka has the stats of a spy. It says, Ivana appears to be a young woman with the statistics similar to a spy. And again, I understand that a stat block doesn't necessarily make someone scary, but a spy certainly won't. Now, this may sound a little bit contradictory to some of our regular viewers, as we've been doing a whole series on homebrewing, which I definitely recommend you watch. But I feel like what I want from an official release is more, I don't know, I don't want to say innovation, but I want the pros to come up with something amazing. An amazing big bad evil guy that I can then go in and tweak, you know, if I think that, oh, his stats are too crazy, or his spell list is too crazy, or what have you. Again, I get what they're going for, but it seems a little bit lazy. Not to mention, like I said before, that there are a couple of reprints and stuff like that in here. However, the saving grace for this book, I think, is chapter 2, where you have the tools here for creating your own domain of dread. Now, there's a big emphasis on creating a Dark Lord and how kind of central they are to, the setting or your domain. Again, I wish they gave you a little bit more, but again, that's what homebrewing is for, right? So there is a big emphasis, but my favorite element comes from the genres. So the genres of horror. Now, it can be hard to define why you like what you like, but these categories, along with tables and example villains, plots, monsters as well, can really help a DM nail the kind of story that they want to explore. And I think that to me is central. So you've got, you know, body horror, cosmic horror, dark fantasy, folk horror, ghost stories, gothic horror, and then like some other ones like disaster horror, cult detective stories, psychological horror, slasher horror. And I'm sure that you could essentially kind of come up with your own definition. But again, this idea that you've got potential villains, right? You've got plots that you can just... Again, I love these tables because I might not roll on them. I might not use exactly what it says, but it inspires me to go and maybe create my own, which I really, really, really like. Speaking of the sample monsters, though, which you do get with each kind of genre of horror, at the back of the book, there is chapter 5, which is Monsters of Ravenloft. And, you know, I was kind of moaning a little bit earlier about the lack of stat blocks for the Dark Lords, or for all of the Dark Lords, I should say. But I do quite like that there are a number of varied CR rated, like challenge rating monsters, including some kind of lower level ones. You know, challenge 1 to maybe 4 or something like that. Because often the monsters in the monster manual can get a little bit repetitive. It's not... you know, when you've been playing D&D for a number of years, and as regularly as some of us do, you get through the monsters and you kind of repeat them. And maybe that's my gripe with them just telling you to go to the monster manual stats. It's that I've used them and I kind of want something new. And this is definitely that, and this is definitely cool. Like the Death's Head, for example. You know, if you've ever seen Sleepy Hollow, right? Just thematic, useful for the kinds of stories that you want to tell. I think that this is good. There should be more of this, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Now, finally, you have chapter 4, which is kind of you know, trying to help you get your head around the idea of running horror adventures and running a horror game. They've done this in the DMG before. They did it in Curse of Strahd as well. Have they expanded on it? Yeah, it seems that way. But I'll be honest, not as much as I think they should have. You know, horror it's a very tough balancing act, and I think the more resources you can give to people, the better. Having said that, you do have a horror toolkit, right, with some kind of cool things. You've got curses, how to kind of possibly make your own, as well as some kind of sample curses. I'd put this in the traps category. There is also a section on kind of like horror traps and occult traps. And then they have, what, a page and a half on fear and stress. And this is poor, I think. I think you need a lot more. You need a lot more help. You need... Give me 20 of these tables with different ideas and things like that. I think that could definitely have been much, much better. Now then, survivors, though. Survivors are a very, very interesting idea. So, page 198 in the book, you've got survivors. Terror doesn't come just for the brave and pre-prepared, often quite the opposite. Some of the most harrowing horror stories involve the least likely heroes, individuals who find their simple lives transformed into waking nightmares. In most horror adventures, your players will employ familiar, adventure-ready characters. That doesn't need to be the case, though. Instead, for short, low-power adventures, immersive retellings of tragic events, out-of-body experiences, or other unique tales, consider providing players with temporary, standing characters called survivors. This section provides guidance for using survivors, characters designed for 1 to 3 session adventures focused on survival rather than saving the day. Using survivors helps create horror experiences focused on the dread inherent to having limited resources and facing impending doom without forcing players to risk their favorite character. So I'm very intrigued by, and I love this idea that they put forth, where they say survivors provide players front row seats to important historic events. It's one thing to hear about the massacre at Castle Ravenloft following Strahd von Zarevich's transformation into a vampire, but it's another to play it. Now that sounds really cool. The other thing that I'm 100% behind is this little tidbit that they put at the bottom, where they say dwindling resources contribute to terrifying situations. When a group runs out of hit points, spells, food, or other vital reserves, tension and dread increase. High-level characters, though, have such resources in spades. By running an adventure using survivors, you can recapture some of the same tension adventurers experienced early in their careers, which I am 100% behind. That's a really, really cool idea. Survivors. You can kind of create your own. They have leveling, but like, I love this image of kind of the bloody bride, right? And again, if you watched kind of any zombie movies or anything like that, if you ever played Zombicide, it's all about the survivors. But yeah, you've got these kind of sample just nobodies who are just trying to survive. And finally, there is a little short adventure called The House of Lament. I've always appreciated these little adventures that they put in to kind of ease people into the setting, or the big pre-written adventure. I really enjoyed Death House, which was the one for Curse of Strahd. So I think I'm gonna enjoy this one, and it's probably the most likely thing that I will play in it. Just run my players through a little kind of thing like this, and then, well, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff in there that I definitely want to give a try to, though. So there we have it. I love Ravenloft, and so I'm in the bag on this one. But I can see how this would maybe not be for everyone. Either way, though, let us know in the comments below your thoughts. Thank you for watching, and as always, keep slaying. If you've enjoyed this content, then please smash that like button, subscribe, share this around online, and come and visit our website, www.lavictoriaproductions.com, to see all our past episodes, as well as our blog posts and all the stuff that we're currently working on at La Victoria Productions. Why not reach out to us and tell us what you think of our videos? You can reach us on Twitter. @MouthLaVictoria is our producer. We are also on Instagram. I am EnanoLVP, and our producer is Jazzy J. Shiro. We're also La Victoria Productions on Facebook and LinkedIn. Come on by and let us know what you think.